Doesn't matter what grades you get, because when you are at work, they're only going to see how street smart you are and how much common sense you can apply to a problem solving. Nobody's checking what CGPA you got. So it's one thing getting different kind of people together. It's another thing really getting them to work together. And I think younger women, when they graduate, are probably at par. They have the same hunger, same aspiration. Then life happens. And when life happens, aspirations move differently, and that's when equity kicks in. My mom tells me, now I'm getting married, I should move with my husband, or I have a baby, I need to do things differently. If I take this subject, what will happen? If I apply for this college and I don't get it, what will happen? Nothing will happen. You apply for something else. You get another subject, you get another degree. If this job doesn't work out, what will happen? Nothing. You go and find yourself another job.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Chat Masala. Super excited to have Anuranjita Kumar with us. She's had an illustrious career, first in the corporate world as MD and head of HR across Citi, RBS, and then recently she has launched her own company, WeAce. She's also the author of multiple books on a variety of topics. So super looking forward to getting into all of this today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Really looking forward. It's always a pleasure to meet you, and now we're in conversation, so looking forward to the chat.
So what are some things you're working on today? What are some big challenges you're focused on?
So look, I think it was a very thought out decision to move on to doing something on my own, because I was probably looking for liberation and doing things my own way, in a way that I feel that I could build a legacy in some ways. So I think Impact Ventures was my gig, and I decided to focus on how can we make workplaces more gender balanced. So that's the focus area, and that's what I breathe and live every day. And apart from that, trying to get my kids in order, and trying to get husband in order, and trying to travel a few places. So multiple other things, as always.
Oh, that's amazing. Why don't we get straight into that? I mean, you've headed HR departments at such large corporations. What are some keys? What are some steps you took and that other companies can take to make spaces more equitable for all, especially in India?
Yeah, so I'll be really honest. I think as companies, it's always there on the charter and the agenda. This is a very top-down driven agenda that we want our workplaces to be more diverse and, more importantly, more inclusive. So it's one thing getting different kind of people together. It's another thing really getting them to work together. So I think most organizations will have it on their agenda, but like many stages of evolution, including human species, they're in different stages of evolution. So we have companies who are in this, if I may be candid, tick the box mode, compliance, because, my shareholders want it or my CEO wants it. But it's not deep seated. It's more like I have to do it, so I'm doing it, which means the buy-in is at a different level. The next level will be awareness. I get it, and I'm trying to figure out how does this thing really work. But there is some magic wand. So there is an acknowledgement that if I have different kind of people working, men, women, LGBTQ, younger people like who graduate from Athena, you get different generations working together. There's something magical about how it drives productivity. And the third level will be where there's commitment. It works. I've seen it happening, and I wanted to do a lot more of this. And then the fourth level is integration, where it's part of my DNA. So it's an evolutionary thing, and different companies that I've worked for have moved through these stages as well.
Got it. So number one is just check the boxes, pay lip service. Number two is you begin to see engagement between people from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And then number three is commitment.
Yes.
And number four is integration, when it's just what you do. What are some concrete steps organizations can take to move down that ladder of evolution? What are some kind of everyday actions you would recommend?
So look, there are some dramatic actions, and then there are everyday actions. And if you look at an employee life cycle in any company, it starts from hiring to developing to retaining to rewarding to exit. People may go willingly or not willingly. So a lot of companies will focus on hiring because that's the source of talent. And how do I get more women? How do I get more different kind of people who will add to my employee workforce? Then it's about how do I develop them. And I think a lot of companies are focused on skilling, which is where companies like us are working in. When we talk to women, typical issues are around clarity, confidence. I think younger women, when they graduate, are probably at par. They have the same hunger, same aspiration. Then life happens. And when life happens, aspirations move differently, and that's when equity kicks in. My mom tells me, now I'm getting married, I should move with my husband, or I have a baby, I need to do things differently. So companies would focus on issues that women face and help them tide over, as much as they also focus on men. Because I think in some way our society is very partisan to men and women in different ways. So women can take breaks, but specifically in India, it's not really a favorable thing for a boy or a man to take a break. So, for a lot of companies, they try and calm down men, if I may say, and also make them more attuned to how women may work and help them, bring bridge it together in terms of working styles. So companies focus a lot on skilling from development. Retention is done by working conditions, after COVID, whether it's hybrid, it's back to office, what are the working arrangements which can work for different kind of people, men and women, and then exits. What are your derailers? What are your enablers? What ticks? What doesn't tick? So companies take steps on all of these.
Okay, that's very interesting. If we can backtrack a little bit, I would love to learn more about what were you doing as a young person, as a teenager? What were some activities you were involved with that maybe laid the foundation for your career in leadership? And are there any activities you would recommend young people, especially young girls, do to set themselves up for success?
So, I hope my kids are not listening to this, but when I was growing up, I was a bit of a rebel. And I think it could be because, my mom decided and she was moving around, my parents were moving around, so they sent us to a boarding school. So in year 2, I went to a boarding school, and I think, I wasn't traumatized. I was a very happy boarder, by the way. And but one thing it did was that you take your decisions very early, for good or for bad. There was nobody to ask. So you decide what you want to do. And that manifested itself in, my parents are doctors that decided not to become a doctor and do a corporate job or do management. So I think decision making was important. And that gets in a bit of the whole appetite to take risks. And you decide, and when you take risk, you also start holding yourself accountable. It's not like mom told me to do this or dad told me to do this. You choose a college or you choose a profession. It's your choice. And so I think taking risks and taking my own decisions came to me very early. And by the way, I took plenty of wrong decisions. We'll not talk about my husband, but I took plenty of wrong decisions. Okay. No, he's a very nice guy. But I think taking charge is what came to me more easily.
Got it. And this was in the second year of high school? When did you go up to boarding school?
So no, I went in year 2. So I was 6 or 7 years old.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No. So I went in year 2. I went to Wellams, and there were very few schools who would take kids at that age. My parents are doctors, and they were moving around quite a bit. So that's what prompted it. But it's a bit like that's all I know. So I was very happy. It's a class of 20, and I look at those days very fondly. The other thing is when you live in a hostel and you come back home, you get overtly pampered. So that was the good side of being in a boarding school. But yeah, I went very early.
So it was cultivating this capacity for decision making and risk taking early on that has really served you. For young people who don't have a chance to go to boarding school, how do you encourage them to take on more decisions and take on risk on an everyday level? Anything you recommend?
Yeah, I have 2 kids, and my husband, for whatever reason, decided not to send them to boarding school. Nothing to do with me, trust me. But, we were moving around countries, and they had a slightly different upbringing. But I think, for parents, before I come to kids, is, as they say, leave your kids alone. So a little bit of that resonates, and I think they find their way. Yeah. So for the message for the kids is, experiment. try different things. I think somewhere, I don't know how, but the fear of failure kicks in. I found that with my children as well. If I take this subject, what will happen? If I apply for this college and I don't get it, what will happen? Nothing will happen. You apply for something else. You get another subject, you get another degree. If this job doesn't work out, what will happen? Nothing. You go and find yourself another job. So I think taking risk, and when you're kids and you're younger, you have much less to lose. So your fear of loss it should not be there, because you have much more to gain. So if something goes right, great. If it doesn't go right, well, you would have learned what hasn't gone right. So when you hit a wall, it's God's way of telling you to take a turn. So that's what I would recommend. Just try different things. When you're in your 20s, the thing that I regretted is that I didn't try enough. So I'm much older, and as I was growing up, it was more about settle down. And settle down meant for women get married, and for men get a nice job. So we grew up, and I went to college, and then I went to do my management, and you went to campus. And sometimes, I go to MBA campuses here too. It's the same process which I was when I was there 30 years back. Day 1, day 2, day 3. I actually have been giving a lot of feedback to IIMs that for me, that process is very, very archaic. But for whatever reason, social reasons, that continues. But it prevents taking risk, right? It prevents a free flow of jobs. So I would really, really push you, try different things, try different fields. Don't get straitjacketed, because, you have another 40 years to figure out where your passion is. And then you want to figure that out quite quickly. It took me 25 years to do that. You can do it in 2 years if you try different things and pursue that.
Got it. So you're saying do that experimentation, be daring. But then when you find that one thing, then would you recommend kind of go after it?
Like you did.
Okay.
Right? I mean, from Princeton, you would have multiple choices, Rahul, and you chose. You and I met many years back when you were setting up Athena, and we'll not talk about the office in those days, but look, how things panned out to be.
Appreciate it. Lovely. So getting that range, and I think that helps, because a lot of young people are so kind of, oh my God, am I making the absolute right decision? And I think it's really liberating to say that, it's okay.
And let me also add, as I've seen my children go through the whole IB process and the college app process, and I think it was stressful for us as parents because they were stressed out about it. And now when we look back, when they joined, like my daughter's starting to work, and that day something happened, and I was just counseling my son, and I said, it doesn't matter what grades you get, because when you are at work, they're only going to see how street smart you are and how much common sense you can apply to a problem solving. Nobody's checking what CGPA you got. But I think we get overtly obsessed. Yes, it matters. I'm all for acads. But I think finding that passion, and that's not an easy one to do. So keep going.
Got it. Speaking of finding your passion, would love to zoom in on your decision to leave an illustrious corporate career and launch WeAce. What went into that decision, and what were the early steps like?
So in spite of all the gyan I'm giving here, let me tell you, I also went through a bit of dilemma when I decided to do this. So, and at my age, I was in my late 40s, and there was much more barriers for me to go off. And the risk of failure is way higher at my age than when you're younger. So I went through this debate with myself about, what if it doesn't work? And I was fearful because I was going to there was an opportunity risk, there was a capital risk, there was a personal risk, what will happen in 2 years. So there were many risks which were playing up. So I think in my situation, what helped was talking to a few mentors who have known me for a while and we have cultivated that relationship. Sometimes I feel they know me better than I know myself. So one such mentor that I spoke to, he said, what is the flip-flop happening in your head? You've been wanting to do something on your own, and, it'll never be the right time. And I was very clear, before I get to my 50s, I need to go because it requires a certain amount of energy. And I said, what if it doesn't work? And he turned around and said, what if it does? And that was the end of that debate. Because the point is, in my head, I was not thinking the upsides. I was only focused on the downsides because I had accumulated so many things in my coffer, letting go of a big office, 100 people team. You have good quality people working with you. You're great. You are being paid really well. Giving up all of that and going into a green field was very daunting. So he told me, he said, what if it works? Have you thought about the upside? And I hadn't in so much detail. The second thing he told me is, so what if it doesn't work? What's the worst thing that can happen? You will go back to the corporate world and do a similar job again. And I loved it, because I liked what I did. So when the worst option wasn't that bad enough, then what was really holding me back? It was just my mindset. And that's what really prompted me to jump in.
Okay, amazing. And what's the vision for WeAce now and in the future? You talked about a legacy. What legacy would you like to leave?
So, mission is very clear from an organization perspective is balance workplaces. And for me, it came from a practitioner point of view. That as companies, we invest a lot, everybody's focused, but we don't get ROI. And, when we were debating, researching, we debated typically like an entrepreneur, B2C or B2B. And we also realized that a lot of men and women out there are a little confused about the whole agenda. Women are yet struck with, it's not a beauty product. It's not a simple buying clothes, shoes, entertainment, which is much more tangible. They were not sure about the skilling benefit, like I wasn't sure about whether I needed to jump in. So that's what veered towards B2B. And we knew that there were things broken. We understand that space. And we knew that if we can partner with zillions of companies, they will help us change it. And that's exactly the path we are on. So for me, let's say, I wouldn't say 10, but 5-6 years down the line, if we've been able to move needles in workplaces by a few percentages, that'll be great. The mandates are there. I mean, I was in Pune literally 2 days back, where the CEO of this big Indian conglomerate has given a mandate 40% diversity in the workplace. Gender. We're only talking gender. And the group companies, range from 3% to 12%. So can you imagine what we're dealing with here? If I can get this bridge completed through talent, development, acquisition, and retention, it can just change the whole ball game. The second thing, Rahul, as you well know, I keep telling the companies, if you look at, there's a Manpower Group report of 2022, which tells you the skill shortages in India. And they are forecasting almost for the relevant skills, a 83% shortage in India. And I'll, encourage everybody to look at that report. And so the way we look at it is in an economy where there is a formal economy, 500 million people are deployed. I'm talking about white collar formal economy, right? Of this, about 110 million are in private sector, the kind of companies many kids like to work in. Of which about, we're running at the growth, the deficit over the years is 36%. So because the industry is growing so fast, this 110 million may become 150 to 200. But we have a deficit of 30% running. We don't have talent in the companies. Now, most men are deployed. Okay, most educated women are not. So that's your talent pool. And that's the business case of having women at work or getting them back to work. And then how do you get them back to work, and what you do is what we work at. So for me, legacy will be moving these numbers in a realistic way. And I find that when it comes to the women's space, on a lighter note, when I launched my venture, a lot of investors thought it was a Section 8 non-profit company. Because, anything to do with women has to be a non-profit. And I was like, no, we are very clear. This is a for-profit. It's impact, but it's for-profit. And it's taken us a lot of convincing in the investor ecosystem. I've had a lot of unsolicited advices from the investor. Ki Anu, why don't you put some makeup classes, dressing class? That's what women like, right? And I've had to tell them I'm on LinkedIn, not a TikTok. So there's a big differentiation in the way these things work. But the whole investor ecosystem is so I wouldn't say is not aware or under-invested. So on one hand, we are saying, we need this for talent, we need this for the industry. But I see more money going in D2C products than in education and, retention of women at workplace.
Got it.
So to change the investor ecosystem as well.
Ooh, okay. Change the investor ecosystem.
Where I think there's more awareness why this agenda is important for the industry. and more investment coming in. I find that the clients need us. So we're pretty self-sufficient. Yes, we've kind of raised some money, but I find that the investor ecosystem is not fully convinced of the scaling viability of the products.
Got it. So investors should focus less. Less
A
on.
little more. I'm not saying they can
Okay.
focus where they're focusing.
Got it.
But I do believe that whether it's private equities or venture capital, the money has to get deployed in impact areas like these for us to really address it. And that's one big reason why we're not a non-profit. Because I understand that VCs also have to give returns to their investors.
Got it. On a systemic level, another challenge is the gender pay gap across India,
Yes.
across the world. What are some steps we can take to address that?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I mean, if you look at the research, it'll tell you it'll take another century for that to vanish away. I think there are two call-outs I would make to the corporates. One is that women traditionally do take breaks because of kids or the life stages they go through. But when they are about to come back, there are two reasons which hold them back. One is obviously the whole home ecosystem, and second is when they look at the financial viability of coming back, they're so heavily discounted, and so when they compare and they see it doesn't make sense, so then they decide not to come back to the workforce. But that pay gap is real, right? And as a professional, I can tell you that if I was getting paid, I would bring it up. So it's also for women to push the ceiling. I find a lot of women are okay to work at a discount. And more women are sticky on the culture than on the pay. And that also comes from the fact that many women are not bread earners for the family. So when I talk about equity and equality, I speak about it from both sides, that if you want to be at the right pay, and you should have the aspiration to also be the bread earner for the family. But for the corporates, I think it's extremely important from a retention perspective of the right talent. So I've been around the table where discussions would happen. She's married, her husband's working well, so it's okay, 10% less. Because from a dual income perspective, you're sorted. Or, she's taken a break and we can discount her. So these are real discussions which happen around the table. And I think which is what we're trying to do. So we need to have more women in decision-making roles who can apply a different lens to it, and how we performance manage, reward women, behaviors. I think when we think about leadership, the default persona of a CEO is a man. And on a lighter note, we were running this session for another company, and we had Chat GPT as a panelist. And we asked Chat GPT, name top 10 CEOs, all men. This is tech. Okay, and so we said, are there no women? No, I'm so sorry. I am not perfect. The standard answer, right? And top 10 CEOs of women up here. Then we said, name CEOs again. So in some way we trained OpenAI, because then suddenly there were 4 women in the top 10. But it's there. And I think at CEO levels, the gap is yet bridging up, but at mid to senior level, there is a problem. And I think the reviews, the decisions, most importantly, how you reward performance and leadership, those parameters need to be re-looked at for women to catch up.
You mentioned that leadership should be evaluated on different parameters.
Yes.
What are some of those that we should look at, organizations should look at more closely?
Yeah, so, putting on my HR hat, when I'm sitting around the table and doing a review, typically I saw a few things coming up, like tenure. How long has the person been around? Now, what happens is, Rahul, that many women take breaks, given life stages, and so they have broken tenures. And sometimes they don't add up. So how much hard I may work, I cannot make up for the lost time, which is very different than a student who takes a gap year. It doesn't matter in the long run. For women, it does. And from a performance point of view, organizations, when they look at, what roles and how we retain them, they look at it differently. Maybe they shouldn't. Second is quality of experience, right? I mean, we find that women are typically doing more support roles. They're not in the main line, sales, marketing. Now, reality is who gets paid better and who gets to the CXO roles are people who are in the mainline roles. And women not being in mainline roles could be a function of their own aspirations sometimes, and also the organization willing to take a bet on them. And the third thing is the behavior. How you do it. So there are certain things which men do which get looked at as the right behavior, driving, aggressive, sales numbers. And unfortunately, women exhibit the same behavior, it's held against them. So I think those are few things which I would say will need to be looked at.
Got it. So one thing is like how we perceive these breaks in career, and I think we as a culture need to be more understanding of those. That's number one. And then you talked about these particular behaviors that are traditionally associated with leadership. We
Also,
need to rethink that.
I also want to add one more thing which just came to my mind is also perceptions, right? So when we are performance managing or potential management, in organization, the big processes like talent management, I've actually been privy to discussions where it'll be like, oh, you really want to consider her for this key role, but don't know how long she's around. She just got married, or she's just having a baby. I cannot afford this stuff in between. And so maybe she's aspirational, but I think the problem is the perception is that this is what I see. And hence, many women I never even considered for some of this.
Got it. So that perception, I think it's a matter of culture and how we think about these issues. So how did you kind of begin to change narratives when you were in HR head roles? How do we begin to change that very perception?
So I think being gender neutral here in terms of the perception as an HR head, when we focused on this, you have to bring data to the table, right? It's not just empty talk. So when somebody would talk about it, we talk with data and saying, okay, there's so many women and this is how she's been rated. Look at the performance and look at the potential. So that data helped. The perceptions can only be fought with data. The second thing is when we're talking about the narrative for overall organization, we also have to change the narrative what women have for themselves. So we found more women attriting. We had to change that, which means the aspiration gap and the motivation for women also need to be kindled. So we had to do both these things, but for the organization, it's extremely data driven. And not data that you have. If you go by traditional data, I'll show you more men are doing better, more men are CEOs. Data going into what has prevented women from coming forward, and the ones who have actually done such a fabulous job. And actually it'll balance out. I mean, you talk about things like products, consumer sets, design thinking. I remember working not as HR head, but as WeAce with a few companies like an auto company. And we were debating with them about some CXO roles, and I could see that many significant stakeholders were not very convinced about the whole thing. And we started talking about the consumer set and the design thinking. And we talked about things like seat belts, right? And seat belts are usually, I've had 2 kids and I love driving, but pregnant women tying seat belt is a very onerous task. So I used to tie the seat belt from the back, which means I've negated the safety feature anyways, but the car is not going beep, beep, beep. But because there is no other way to do it. So has somebody thought about this, that this product can be suited better to, and there's so many women who have kids, for example. The second thing is, I don't know how many of you are aware, but the default testing for cars happens on a dummy, which is 170 centimeter tall and 76 kgs.
Oh, okay.
That's a default male body. So when we say human testing, we're saying male testing. Now, what does that result in? 25% more women die in car accidents because cars are not made and tested for women's safety. Women are shorter, they're more petite. So every time I drive a car, I have to pull my seat up, right? I have to put my settings. I have to elevate it because I can't see the headlights. So the cars are not made, boys will get excited with boom, boom, boom. What is the power of the car? Women get excited by the comfort of the car or the safety of the car. So I can go on. But the discussion was about how is the product and how many women drive the car, by the way? 40%. Now let's talk. Do you really want a product head who's a woman or not? Right? So you have to deal with it with data. It's not a debate which you can have on emotions, because that's already happened and I've seen that happening. But when you bring forward right business cases and data to the table, I think the corporates understand and they're willing to actually, change their theories or perceptions as the case may be.
Got it. No, I think this is helpful. So, of course, there's the ethics, there's the emotion, but if you supplement that with data, with case studies like these.
But data also, I wouldn't say, don't take out a McKinsey research and connect it to P&L, because in the corporate world, there are very intelligent people. They know all this exists. So that's not going to sway them. What's going to sway them is here and now. And I can go, on and on about sector examples where I can see that if you have the right mix and talented women in the right roles, evaluated rightly, they can make a significant impact to your business.
Can you help unpack that? You said you wouldn't point to a McKinsey report. You would point to what instead?
I would point to business-specific examples, like the one I talked about, car.
Got it.
Another
for
one.
the particular industry.
Yes. So, for example, financial services, which is a sweet spot for me. But we were talking to an insurance company lately. And we went to the boardroom. The CEO said, my team's not fully convinced. And we constantly, the language and the communication in the room also deters women, right? Microaggression in the leadership tables. And so when I went into the room and I said, well, so how's the business doing? And they were like, oh, it's doing really well, 30% up. And how many women paid the premium? 0. Women are also okay because the husband is managing finances. Now, this is where I say women also need to change. But I say, is there any product which you think you can get women consumers to pay? So it's like all products apply to women, life, non-life, medical, car, true. So I said, on our platform, not that we cater to this stuff, but a lot of women come and complain about abuse, family issues, husband issues, divorces and blah, blah. So now in this case, we, send them to women organizations who deal with it. And I said, if they had an insurance that they had a divorce and you will give them 2 crores, I think they will take it. So this guy, the sales head was like, yeah, we can have a product, but Anu, there'll be a fraud. People will give divorce to each other and they'll take the money. So we had to turn around saying, yeah, there could be a fraud, but we're an insurance industry that works on probability. Tell me one insurance product which doesn't have any probability of a fraud. The point is, how do you mitigate that? And how do you put checks and control rather than saying there'll be a fraud and then I shouldn't do it, right? And we know that when things go wrong in a marriage, women suffer more because, sillily enough, they're not financially independent, right? And that's a big insecurity for women. So if you have a product or structure a product which can actually mitigate this, you'll be liberating women and giving them their freedom back. And of course, I said IP is mine in case you decide to structure it. But so I'm coming back to your question, a long-winded answer. But I think when I say you need to give them data, this is what I'm talking about. Research is immense amount of research there by BCG or McKinsey, but that hasn't changed the needle because it's too high level for many decision makers.
Got it. Would love to segue to one of your books is related to this topic.
Yes.
How can we have it all?
Can I have it?
Can I have it all? Can I have it all? When did you start writing that, and what were the inspirations and motivations?
Yeah, I think that's when I started looking at this topic. So I think the seeds of entrepreneurship were sowed in 2015 when I wrote the book, because I did a lot of research and I picked up 200 women in different stages of their career and went through the journey. And so that's what prompted it. But funnily enough, when I saw the BBC headline on Jacinda Ardern, Can Women Have It All? It just felt like, we've gone a few steps back. Because she had a burnout and she wanted to leave, and it was just bizarre for me. So for me, 2015 was a huge insight into the challenges. I thought I was the only one who was having some of these issues, but when I kind of looked around, there were many. And so the intent of the book was to share stories of these women along the road. These are stories not of your big leaders, who we read a lot in media about. These were stories of women like us. There is extraordinary effort being made by so-called ordinary women, which needed to be recognized. That woman who's struggling with her mother-in-law and yet coming to office. That woman who's leaving that 2-year-old behind and yet fighting with her boss about the project that she wants. That woman who's saying, I've given up, I just don't know how to handle it. Or that leader who said, I don't care, what is going on, but I'm going to persist because the next generation can then it'll be easier for them. So it is about 20 women who probably media will not cover, but I thought they had some fabulous lessons to give us. So that's what the book was about.
It's amazing. Any specific lessons or any patterns you identified that you'd like to share?
So the book, once we got the stories, we kind of propagate 7 C's, which is also a model now we use at WeAce for training. So which is, purpose, so clarity of purpose and where do you want to go? And in this, honestly, Rahul, there are women who want to be housewife, and that's okay too. I don't want to give a judgment, because I think if they've made a choice, I want to be a homemaker, and it is very hard work to be a homemaker, and you don't even get paid for it. So I think it's about having that clarity, not under any pressure or social conditioning, but making that choice, knowing that this will make me happy in a real way. Women have this tendency to please other people, and in that they forget about themselves. So that's clarity. Conviction, so you want to do this, but being convinced about it is the real fire or the fuel behind it, because whatever path you take, there will be hurdles. Whether you're a working woman or you're a housewife, there will be problems. There'll be maid problems at home, and there'll be boss problems in work, right? So, having the conviction to pursue the path is extremely important. And then the third one is the courage which is coming from within. It's the bravery, it's the mindset. So that, and then we talked about the confidence, which women waver depending on their life. So these are the four of what is it that you want to focus on. The other three was how, which was around collaboration, connect, and the choices that you make.
I love alliteration, so this is beautiful. So just to repeat, clarity, conviction,
courage, choices, connect,
confidence,
connect, collaboration.
So the three hows are collaboration, connect, and choices. Okay. Oh, that's a wonderful framework, very relevant today. Would also like to discuss your other book, Color Matters. Where did that come from? And I'm so interested in the multifacetedness of your academic insights. Would love to hear more about Color Matters.
Yeah. So Color Matters is focused on diversity from a race and ethnicity lens. And for me, that came from the global stints that I've had. And, funnily enough, as Avni is very, very American and Sid is very, very British. And so it's kind of bringing the kids together as well. But for me personally, I felt that when I was working in the US or in Europe, I felt many places the color took predominance over the gender. So now there's an intersectionality of being a brown woman. As a managing director in HR, when you walk into Canary Wharf and you walk into an MD room and all you see is white men, balding, sitting around a table in grey and black suits, it can be a very uncomfortable feeling. And, overcoming that, and as a brown woman, so now within the women subset, there are white women, there are brown women, and the black women, and that is the hierarchy. And I felt that many a times, maybe I wasn't getting as much support from even the white women. So to me, the color was another source of difference which needed to be acknowledged. And I remember, doing this experiment, or we were in a panel like this, and one of the panelists says, when you get up in the morning, and what do you see in the mirror? The two white women said women, and I said, no, I see a brown woman. Because for me, that was an impediment, so to say. And it so happened that in London, I started working on the corporate side of the business and investment banking. Forget women, there are no Asians. So that became another dimension for us to manage. So it brought it together, and I just feel that it's spoken less about in India. And there is the race and ethnicity. I mean, in India, for example, the caste system is a big reflection of that. We know somebody's surname. We know almost 70% about where they belong, what they eat, and what they do. Indians per se, they may look up to the white supremacy and they look down on the blacks. And that's the reality, and that's what our research says. So there are shades of these colors which evoke certain emotions, which have a role to play at workplace. And it is a dimension which the corporates are dealing with. And it's kind of playing out in different ways at workplace.
Got it. So this was, in a sense, your two books are an exploration of this intersectionality and how you've overcome it, and you're sharing your insights with others. Amazing. Lovely. One question we'd love to ask is, what do you know now with this breadth of experience that you wish you knew when you were 20, 21, starting off your career?
I would just say, it doesn't matter. Just be yourself. And I think, at least when I was 20, 21, I was just trying to do too many things, and I felt it mattered. Others' opinions mattered. and it could include your own family too. But I felt that mattered. I wish I'd cared less about that and done more about what pleased me, because I think paths to maybe entrepreneurship or creating something as beautiful as WeAce may have started earlier. So I would say just be yourself and don't worry so much about the environment. Take more risk, experiment. I genuinely wish I had experimented much more. I experiment to the extent I would do medicine and do psychology, but I wish I had experimented much more. I was with an employer for 23 years. The reason I was with Citi for 23 years is because I moved around and I experimented a lot. But I yet feel that we had the choice. But I felt it was too impossible. And now I know that it is impossible till it is done.
That's helpful. One thing I want to ask is, any advice you have for young men in particular? You talked about how we can promote a more inclusive culture. What's the role of young men and men in general in that effort?
I think the society is very hard on men. That's my honest view. I think we just expect too much out of men. And it's okay to cry. And it's okay to express emotions. It's okay to be in touch with your own vulnerabilities. But there is so much pressure to show that you're the strong guy, and I feel that plays out very differently for men. So I think being, in touch with your softer side is important, and to be able to express it when you're not okay is extremely important for men. And the second thing I would say, please learn how to make your bed.
Got it. Thank you so much. We have a rapid fire round as well. So beginning with that, 3 skills teenagers should focus on.
Reading, less time on the phone, and calling your parents.
Agreed on that too. Lovely. What's one value you hold dear that you would like more young people to embrace?
Fairness. I genuinely believe in it, and I learned it when I was doing a coaching course. For me, the sense of fairness, and it's like in your head, is important. Just be fair to yourself and to people around you. In terms of, it's not a transaction. It's just an emotional banking that you do on both sides.
What do you mean by emotional banking?
It's a bit like, it's a relationship investment. So I should have specified fairness and relationships.
Okay.
And I think sometimes we go overboard and then you feel that you have overstretched. And I find that happens with young people very often. And sometimes you underinvest, but you expect a lot. So just try and reach that fairness level, which means fairness to you.
Understood. Excellence is blank.
Honesty, authenticity.
Ooh.
To me, right? So excellence is being honest. And when you are authentic, the best of you will come out.
Got it. Authenticity. And the last one, kind of our crowning question. What's one difference you would love to see in the world about 10 years from now, 2035? What would you like to see in India or the world at large?
In India and world at large. In India, I would certainly like to see more gender equity. India as a country actually is falling behind. I don't know if you know the numbers, but we have dipped by 20 points in the WEP index, and we are almost in the 136th out of 150. We're closer to Yemen or Oman. Even the Saudi Arabia and Dubai is way ahead than where India is. So given my focus and passion in India, I certainly want to see these numbers getting better, infrastructure getting better for women. And I think it can add to the agenda which the government is driving from an economic perspective. So it's a win-win for everybody. In the world, I'll go beyond the gender equity, but it's my personal view, but I think, the world politics today is actually strengthening the borders. And I think our younger generation needs more agility and fluidity, and they want to breathe across borders. So I think, without getting into the politics of it, I think I'd yet like to see a boundaryless world.
Amazing. And thank you for all your efforts in moving us toward that vision. A lot of amazing lessons, and I hope our viewers have a lot to take out of this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.